Hey, everybody. Dave Hagan here. We're getting to the end of the year and we've got the holidays on us. But you know what it's also time to do? A year-end review. We'll talk about that today on the Financial Wellness Podcast.
Welcome to the Financial Wellness Podcast, Dave's weekly message to keep you on your path to the financial success. Here is your host, financial problem solver and talk show host, Dave Hagan.
Thank you, Nick, and hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of the Financial Wellness Podcast. We've got Brian Reed with us here today. Hey, Brian, how you doing?
Pretty good there, David. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks. We're coming to you, everybody, today from all the usual places. And if you don't remember, think back to a prior podcast because we're all at home. We're all doing our quarantine and our social distancing and all that good stuff. And we're coming to you from all the usual places. So let me ask you this. How'd your 2020 go? I mean, I almost hate to say that. Oh my goodness, what a poo pile of a year. Did you meet any of your goals? It's okay if you didn't. I mean, it really is okay if you didn't. Why? Well, it's because it's been a difficult year. I think that except for maybe a wartime year, and hopefully we won't have any of those on a go-forward basis, but except for a wartime year, this has probably been one of the most difficult years we'll ever see in our lifetime, or at least one of the top three for sure. I mean, there was no way to plan really for 2020 at the way stuff was coming at us. It seems like we were almost reactive all year long. You know, first we had we had the death of Kobe Bryant, but we had the virus, we had race issues, you know, we had the economy, and we were just reacting to this stuff all year long, just trying to get it on through. And yeah, there were some opportunities to be had out there. Remember we talked about, Brian, the kid that opened up a disinfectant business. He was disinfecting hotels and this and that. And he bought one of these foggers and, and so, he had found some economic opportunity in a difficult time, but for the most part, we were just reacting and it was just brutal. And you know what? It's okay. I mean, it's okay if you didn't do too well on your goals these years. I mean, normally I say, hey, look, you gotta hit these goals. You got a little bit of time left. We're looking at maybe 5, 6, 7% in the whole year. And normally at this time of the year, we're talking about, hey, take a look, get your goals, hit your goals, do some things to get caught up, et cetera, et cetera. And this year I'm going, it's okay, man. That's the way it is. That's the kind of year that it's been. So, that's okay. This is one of those few times that Brian and I are going to say it's okay.
Let's just ride it out and get to 2021. Let's ride it out and get to 2021.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I can't remember a year that's been as bizarre and where we've been as reactive, and it's just one of those things. We'll look back and we'll laugh, and if you see something like really screwed up or really difficult, I'm sure we'll refer to it as a 2020 on a go forward basis, But to our listeners out there, hey, if you met some goals, that's great. I mean, that's incredible. That's phenomenal. Pat yourself on the back. Now, if you didn't have any goals, ouch, that's a problem. Then we're going to have a little talk. Brian and I are going to have to pull you aside and we're going to have a little talk with you. Stay tuned. I mean, we're going to talk about goal setting in the coming weeks. We've talked about it before. If you want to get a head start on that topic, go to episode 202 of the Financial Wellness Podcast, where we talk about setting goals, but we're going to take that to another level and think about that in another way in a couple episodes. But if you think back to last year, we talked about creating a tombstone statement. Don't know what that is? Go back to episode 202. And we talked about creating long-term goals and short-term goals. And we talked about the 6 things that goals should meet. So if you want to know what those are, go back to episode 202. I listened to it. I didn't remember some of those things. I got to tell you, right, I'm listening to episode 202 earlier in the day, and I'm going, this is pretty damn good. I've forgotten that we were that thorough back.
That was a good point.
2. It was, yeah, really. Who thought that up? But I think that some of this stuff should be repeated periodically because some of the truths are basic and intrinsic, and we'll talk about them in different ways. We'll add to them, subtract to them. But hey, I think 202 was a good one, and that was that was almost 2 years ago now. I think that was episode 202 would have been beginning of season 2, so 2019. Well, maybe not 2 years ago. Yeah, almost 2 years ago, right? Oh, wow. Time flies when you're having fun, you know? But besides meeting your goals, besides that being part of your year-end review, maybe there's some other things that we could review, mostly financial kinds of goals, because this is, after all, the TFWP. And that brings up the question, how'd you do meeting some of your financial goals, or what are some of the things that you can do even to look at some of the things that are related to your financial goals? How you doing? How you closing? And there's some things to look at. For example, review your expenses. You know, go to the debit card statement or go to your bank account and look at some of those expenses. Are there some that you could trim for next year? You know, a little tuck, a little nip, something like that. But take a look at that. Like maybe you've got some old subscriptions that you aren't listening to. You know, maybe you're, you've been subscribing to Apple Music and Spotify at the same time. Maybe it's time to cut that back. Or maybe there's part of your television package, you know, a little trim here or there, something that you might want to take a look at. Maybe you want to do a little wants and needs analysis, and you can trim some of those wants. You know, if you want to have some information or revisit some information about wants and needs, go to episode 223 and listen to that. By the way, I've been talking with college students lately, talking to a couple of classes on the issue of wants and needs, because it's part of the business program at their school. So a shout out to my friends, the students listening from Cal State Northridge and Cal State Long Beach. If you're listening, I know who you are because I've seen y'all in class or over a big Zoom. So I get a kick out of that, and shout out to all of those folks. Another thing you might want to think about is, you know, do I need an increase in income? If you're looking back over the last year and you're going, wow, I'm just hitting the treetops, man. Take a look at your income. Is it time for a different job if you're underpaid or underappreciated? Something to think about. Is it time for maybe a side hustle? Now, I don't know if you want to have a side hustle permanently long term. I mean, you can't work full time and also drive some Uber, but maybe you want to do a side hustle to generate some money for a specific target or a specific goal that you might have. I don't know, something to think about, something to do as part of your year-end review and leading into your goals for next year. What about any opportunities that you might see out there for the upcoming year? You know, Brian, I've been looking at, of course, I've been looking at this for several months, but, you know, I thought that a lot of people would be buying masks. And it turns out I'm really right. Like, who's buying masks? Like everybody. You know, when the thing first hit, I bought one that was like, on one side it was black and the other side it was an American flag. And I thought, well, that's good. And I bought it on a corner. I was headed somewhere, didn't have a mask, and there was some lady sitting there selling masks. So I said, okay, I'll buy one. But since then, I've seen all sorts of people producing all sorts of different kinds of masks, and some are kind of fun. I mean, some of them got some real high end artwork on them from famous artists. I've seen some Van Gogh masks. Someone's rocking some Starry Night on the lower part of
Every
their face.
NFL team has got their own masks, all kinds of different versions with their logos, and all the college teams have their own masks as well. So there's a market. It's another piece of apparel, I guess.
Yeah. Maybe we should get some TFWP masks so we could wear them to the depot and people will go, what is that? I saw a guy, he had like a mask it was like the lower half of a guy's face with like a whole bunch of bearded stubble and a big stogie sticking out, hanging down. And I thought, that is classic. I was thinking about one that would be really interesting. Remember in the cartoons when the wolf would see something he liked and the big tongue would hang out and now ooga. And that would get some attention going through.
I bet you that there's got to be one of somebody like sticking their tongue out.
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool, right? Or I mean, I don't know whatever anyone's potential or particular interest is, but there, maybe that's a business opportunity for someone. You have some printed out and you throw them out on Etsy and you see what happens. Didn't Nick tell us one time he'd bought a mask that had some kind of a political statement on it? I forget what the political statement was, but it was.
I don't remember.
Yeah,
I don't normally listen when Nick talks. Oh, wait, did I say that? I said that out loud, didn't I?
See, Nick doesn't show up and he's getting dogged on the show. You know where Nick is this week, by the way. He's studying for final exams. I said, well, good luck, and I hope that works out well, because as many of you know, he's in law school. And I said, so when you finish this, and then you graduate, guess what? Now you get to take a 2.5-day quiz called the bar exam.
It's a little quiz.
He asked for it, and we can bust his chops about it. But think about that. And on the income side, did you take advantage of any potential opportunities this year? Are there some opportunities that you might be able to take advantage of next year? Something to think about. As you close out on the year, you should also be reviewing your investments. What investments? Well, I hope you've got some money set aside. I mean, if nothing else, an emergency fund, if it hasn't been depleted because of the Cove, or if you're starting to build up some long-term financial wealth, you need to really take a look at that periodically, and certainly at the end of the year. And some of the things you want to ask yourself are my investments properly allocated? Am I carrying too much risk than what I'm comfortable with or what I should have for my age group? Have I touched bases with my financial planner, and does my financial planner agree with the way that I'm moving forward? Are there the kind of investments that I have that maybe I don't want to have next year? I mean, you really don't want companies perhaps that are affected by, the COVID. This year, look at that. Look at the airlines and look at some of the amusement parks and some of the other things that have just been so decimated. I mean, maybe it's an opportunity to trim some of those out of your portfolio. By the same token, is there anything out there that's a unique opportunity where you could invest some money into, maybe something like Brian Reed Face Masks Incorporated or something like that, There's some great opportunities. I mean, I remember March, April, I saw everybody starting to move to use a new program called Zoom. And of course, I immediately, thinking of Peter Lynch's thought, beating the street, look out there to what everybody's doing, stores that are busy, stuff that people have. And I thought, oh, that Zoom, that'd be a great thing. It was a publicly held company, is a publicly held company. And then someone said to me, no, we talked to financial advisors and they're saying, well, it's probably not going to grow that much. Microsoft's got a product, which by the way is a hell of a product, not going to mention their name because they don't pay us any kind of advertising fee. Of course, neither does Zoom, but we're talking about Zoom anyway. And, I wish I had have invested some money in that when the opportunity was there. I think it's up like 600-700%. So the Zoomer would have been a
good call.
Would have been a good buy. Yeah. And I was on the right track. And then I let somebody talk me out of it. And, I'll regret that for a long time to come. What are you going to do? Another thing to look at, have you made all your retirement contributions? You want to make sure that you can max those out. If you've got some money in the bank and you've still got some contributions, you might want to think about doing that. Make sure that that portion of your financial life this year is filled in or completed. Some other things you might think about, not completely financial, but financial related. Hey, is your career on track? Are you doing what you want to do? Are you moving in the right direction? I mean, so many times we just keep doing what we're doing. And if the purpose of your job is just to bring in revenue and that's okay with you, that's great. But if there's something you want to do, something you want to accomplish, some mark you want to make, now's the time of year where you sit down and you think about, wow, is my career on track? For that matter, are they appreciating me, in what I'm doing? I mean, if you're not appreciated in what you're doing at the office or on the Zoomer, maybe it's time to think about doing something else. How about this? Are you living where you want? A lot of people just live where the company tells them to go, but maybe more and more important, are you living where you want? And thoughtful people are also saying, wow, what's the income tax structure where I want to live? Will that affect some of the decisions that I'm making? Tax in California, income tax is what, 10%, 12%, something like that. I hear in Washington, Texas, some other places, Nevada, it's 0. That may fit into where you want to live. Think about that. And here's something kind of odd, but I think you should think about, did I have enough fun? Did I have enough enjoyment, satisfaction, gratification, fun? Did I spend some time having enough fun? So think about that. Yes, really. On the Financial Wellness Podcast, we're talking about having fun because you need to sharpen the saw. And if you don't know what I mean by that, you need to go to Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, because the 7th habit is sharpen the saw. We've talked about it. Mm-hmm. Those of you that are steady listeners know it, get it, dig it. But those of you that are just maybe digging in, you've got some background thinking to do about that. So take a look at these things. Think about these things as the year is closing out. Go off by yourself or lock yourself in a closet, go for a walk, you don't need to spend a ton of time, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever. Take a few notes. You don't have to fill out a whole new notebook. You don't have to fill out a big chart. We don't have any kind of, tool or something like that to sell you. Just write down some of your impressions on a piece of paper or kick them into your phone, on the app where you can store documents or type a few things. And set it out so that you can revisit it and think about it, especially in the weeks ahead as we start to think about, what's our goals? What are we going to do with next year? What is next year going to look like? It seems to me there's going to be a huge reemergence of the economy and business and people getting out, as we continue to social distance and the virus starts to hit. But I think things are going to begin to open up a little bit, and there's a huge opportunity for all of us there. So these are just some things to think about as we get to the end of the year. This is Dave Hagan, and you're listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast.
You've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast, Dave's weekly message to keep you on your path to financial success. If you have a question that you would like Dave to answer on the podcast, go to thefinancialwellnesspodcast.com. You can leave an audio message with one click of a button or type your message into the question box. Either way, it's sent right to Dave's phone. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you receive the new episode notifications. Let's listen in now as Dave answers some emails.
All right, we've got an email here from Jeff. You want to read that, Brian?
You got it, Dave. Jeff writes, "Hi, Dave. Hope you are well. I want to offer some gratitude for all the help and advice we've received from you, sir. So thank you. But I also have a question. I just returned to the U.S. from Britain as my father passed away, and I needed to help my mother. I realized that there is a cost associated with funerals, etc., and wondered how someone should save so they have the funds to take care of such an occasion. Should they have a separate fund? Thanks in advance, Jeff."
All right. Well, first of all, Jeff is a big fan of TFWP. He sent us a couple of emails over the years. So we send a big shout out to Jeff and thank him for listening and for continuing to, send in emails. I've had an opportunity to talk with Jeff on a couple occasions, and he's got this great British accent. I mean, you would really get a kick out of it, Brian. It's a really wonderful thing to have a conversation with someone with a real legit British accent. So keep those emails coming on in, Brian, or not Brian, but Jeff. And, next question, go to the financialwellnesspodcast.com and hit the button and record your question so that Brian can get a sampling of the great accent. So the question is there some way to save for the cost of a funeral, because Jeff had recently had to go over to Britain and his father had passed away, and our condolences, Jeff, as well. But a couple of thoughts on that. I mean, yeah, I suppose you could pay for it out of your emergency fund. I mean, that's kind of an emergency, and that's what emergency funds are for. But more importantly, a lot of times, the costs of the funeral should come from the deceased person's estate. And when there's a probate or when there's a trust, one of the first things that it says always before it gives out any specific bequest is, hey, I direct that all the expenses of my last illness and my funeral be paid out of the estate. So, hopefully this is something that is thought of by the person as they get a little older in life, and they've set something aside. There are also a whole raft of small life insurance policies out there that you can get that are payable on a person's death. So there might be a small amount, and these are small policies. They pay $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 like that. So that's something that someone could get earlier in their life if they want to do that. But if it's not possible to come from the deceased person's estate, well, yeah, I mean, an emergency fund. I wouldn't set up a separate fund. Could you feature that, Brian? I got my emergency fund, I got my long-term savings, I got my retirement, and I got my fund for when my parents croak. That's kind of sucks. That's kind of a bummer,
much.
the croak fund or something. So, I mean, I guess it could come out of the emergency fund. That would be the next best place to do that if it hasn't already been thought of or set up. But a couple other thoughts, don't get upsold by the mortuary company. I mean, the person who's passed away doesn't care how elaborate their funeral is. The funeral's for the surviving people, the good words and the thoughts, and the person's passed. They don't particularly care. And if a mortuary starts on you about, hey, an appropriate legacy for this person and don't buy into that. I mean, a funeral should be a nice ceremony. It should have a religious undertone if that's the thoughts and the needs and the desires of the deceased spouse. But don't get upsold on the 24 karat engraved oak carved casket because it's probably just going to be cremated or put in the dirt. Don't get upsold too much. And then the other thought was, don't get pinned down to pay for it as the most successful kid. I've had lots of circumstances where people have come to see me, a lot of times with some pretty severe financial issues. And one of the debts that they're carrying is, well, my Aunt Tilly died and all of the kids showed up and no one had any money, and they thought that I was the one that had the money. And, I didn't want to say that I didn't have the money. So I, borrowed money to pay for that funeral, and don't get pinned down in that. If there's not money available, there's very, very reasonable, minimal ways to still conduct a funeral and have a burial or a cremation or what they do at sea, those kinds of things. And they're still extremely respectful, and they're still very important and poignant ceremonies and events. So don't get pinned down with, hey, you're from the United States, you must be rolling in it, or you're the most successful kid and we want the big oak carved gold plated casket. Don't get pinned down in that kind of stuff. But those are my thoughts, Jeff. And again, thanks again for those emails. Keep them coming. Send us an audio one. That would be great. And we'll go from there.
And again, our condolences.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm the one talking about the crazy funny stuff, and Brian's job is to always pull me back down to earth and go, Dave, remember, it starts with condolences, dude. That's Brian's job, to keep me tethered down to earth. Buddy. And thank you for that. I appreciate that. Well, that's all we got this week. I think that's going to be a wrap. Tune in next week. We're going to talk about some more thoughts on Christmas shopping, TFWP, and coronavirus style. I think there's some good stuff to talk about. This is Dave Hagan, and you've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast.
You've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast, Dave's weekly message to keep you on your path to financial success. If you have a question that you would like Dave to answer on the podcast, go to thefinancialwellnesspodcast.com. You can leave an audio message with one click of a button, or type your message into the question box. Either way, it's sent right to Dave's phone. Remember, Dave will randomly draw from the submitted questions and pick the winner of a free 1-hour personal conversation with Dave to help you achieve your financial goals. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you receive the new episode notifications, or share the podcast via the app with your family and friends. This is your announcer, Nick Appel, wishing you every financial success.